The story I wish to share with you tonight begins within the familiar, comforting walls of Hogwarts. Though much has been told of the great battles, the bustling halls, and the enchanted classrooms, there are still tales that drift quietly, like whispers through the corridors, waiting for the right ears to listen. This is one such tale, a journey that begins with curiosity, leads into the discovery of ancient magic, and unfolds gently in the hands of one who has always sought wisdom beyond the ordinary. It is an evening at Hogwarts. Outside the castle, twilight has draped itself over the sky, a soft indigo blanket stitched with the first faint stars. The Black Lake reflects the silver crescent moon, and the forbidden forest rustles quietly in the distance, its shadows deep yet oddly comforting when seen from the safety of the high towers. Within the castle, lanterns float gently in the corridors, casting golden pools of light on ancient stone floors. The air is filled with a soothing hush, broken only by the occasional flutter of an owl's wings or the murmur of portraits conversing in the background. The Gryffindor common room glows with warmth, the fire crackling steadily in the hearth. Students lounge in worn but cozy armchairs, parchment spread across tables, quills scratching softly as homework is finished before bed. There is laughter too, though subdued, drifting like music from a corner where a group of friends share stories. The familiar sense of safety and belonging fills every brick of the room, as if the castle itself were cradling its inhabitants in a quiet embrace. Somewhere within these comforting walls, a new thread of adventure is about to begin. It is not loud nor urgent. It does not demand to be heard. Instead, it lingers like a gentle call, a faint note of mystery that invites only those who are attuned to listen closely. This tale speaks of a map, unlike any other, hidden not for protection, but for discovery. A map etched with spells long forgotten, its parchment alive with the glow of ancient enchantments, waiting patiently for the right eyes to unfold its secrets. And so, as you settle yourself into comfort, perhaps imagining the soft flicker of torchlight against cool stone, or the warmth of a thick blanket by the fire, let yourself wander into this world where magic hums just beneath the surface of every step. Tonight, we will journey with Hermione Granger, whose insatiable curiosity and love for knowledge open doors few others would dare to touch. With her, you will walk softly through echoing corridors, listen to the quiet whispers of enchanted objects, and uncover secrets left behind by wizards of ages past. The night will not rush you, nor will it overwhelm. Instead, it will unfold gently, like pages turning in an old beloved book. And as we follow this path together, you may find yourself drifting not only deeper into the mysteries of Hogwarts, but also into a peaceful slumber, wrapped in the calm embrace of its timeless magic. Hermione Granger had always felt most at home within the walls of the Hogwarts library. While others drifted toward the Quidditch pitch, the common room, or the kitchens in search of butterbeer and conversation, Hermione's feet carried her, almost instinctively, toward rows of parchment and ink, shelves towering with wisdom gathered across centuries. On this evening, She sat at her favorite table, tucked near the tall arched window where moonlight pooled across the desk like liquid silver. Her quill rested beside her, though she wasn't writing at the moment. Instead, her eyes moved steadily over the worn pages of a volume she had borrowed, one of those books that smelled faintly of dust and age, the kind that seemed to hum with secrets only the patient could uncover. Her bushy hair caught the golden glow of the lantern hovering nearby, strands shimmering softly as she leaned closer to read. The castle was quiet around her, and though she was not alone in Hogwarts, the silence felt companionable, as though the very stones respected her devotion to knowledge. Not far from her thoughts, Harry and Ron often lingered. Harry, with his untidy black hair and thoughtful green eyes, carried the weight of things too great for his age, yet still found joy in moments of friendship. Ron, ever loyal, ever ready with a quip or a frown, balanced Hermione's intensity with his easy warmth. The three of them had forged a bond so strong that it seemed to hum like its own kind of magic, something not found in wands or charms, but in the steadfast trust of friendship. Tonight, however, Hermione sat alone, her thoughts threading through questions only she could ask. The book before her was not part of the regular shelves she so often explored. It had been tucked away, almost hidden, behind a row of mundane herbology texts, as though someone long ago had not wanted it easily found. The cover was unmarked, the leather aged and cracked, yet her instincts had stirred when she pulled it free. She traced her fingers gently over the edge of a page, her mind always alive with curiosity, always seeking. This was who she was, and who she had always been, the girl who asked why when others accepted because. The one who lingered to read footnotes most would pass over, and who carried answers not to boast, but to illuminate paths others had not noticed. And though she was often teased for this, both Harry and Ron had long since come to rely on her wisdom, her preparedness, her unshakable drive to find solutions even in the darkest of moments. To them, she was not simply their brilliant friend. She was the compass who reminded them where true north lay, even when shadows clouded their way. Here, with the quiet rustle of parchment and the scent of candle wax melting in the air, Hermione felt that familiar spark, a tug at the edge of awareness, as though this night might hold something more than study, something waiting just beyond the next page. The castle of Hogwarts had its own rhythm, a breath and a heartbeat that whispered through stone corridors, over worn staircases, and beneath the arches of its vaulted ceilings. Hermione knew this rhythm better than most. She could sense when the air shifted, when the castle wanted to reveal something. That night, as she leaned over the fragile, unmarked book in the library, she felt it, a subtle change in the silence, like the hush before a secret was spoken aloud. The lantern above her flickered, though there was no draught. Hermione raised her eyes, alert but calm. The shadows stretched oddly along the shelves, bending in ways they shouldn't. She closed the book for a moment, smoothing her hand over the cracked cover, and then tilted her head as if listening. The library was still, yet there was something, a low hum, almost below the range of sound, as though the book itself was breathing. Hermione gently opened it again. The pages, yellowed and fragile, whispered against one another. At first, she saw only dense text in a cramped, archaic hand, but as her eyes traced the lines, the ink shimmered faintly. Letters seemed to dissolve and reform, curling into shapes that were not words at all, but symbols. Runes, yet not the runes she had studied in Professor Babbling's class. These were older, their edges sharp and deliberate, the kind that carried the weight of forgotten spells. Her heart stirred with both wonder and caution. She leaned closer, careful not to touch the ink. The runes shifted again, and then, like water clearing to reveal stones beneath, a new image formed upon the page, the outline of a map. It was faint, as though etched in silver dust, glowing softly in the moonlight spilling across her desk. Lines appeared, some straight, others curving and looping back upon themselves, intersecting at points marked with tiny symbols. Hermione blinked, scarcely breathing, her mind racing. It was not a map of Hogwarts she recognized. The structure seemed layered, almost like the cross-section of something hidden deep beneath the school. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her quill, intending to make notes. But before the tip could touch parchment, the lantern flared, casting long beams of light across the map. The silver lines brightened and then lifted, rising up from the page as though they were strands of enchanted thread. The air shimmered, and the map floated above the book, rotating gently, a three-dimensional image suspended before her. Hermione gasped, but quietly, as though not to disturb the delicate enchantment. The map was alive. Corridors and chambers spiraled outward, shifting like they were adjusting themselves to her gaze. At the center was a symbol, an ancient seal shaped like an interlocking knot, pulsing faintly with light. Her instincts told her this was important, though its meaning remained veiled, and then she noticed the words, inscribed along the bottom edge in curling script, Magia Perdita, the lost spells. A thrill rippled through her chest. Lost spells. The very phrase sent her imagination soaring. Spells that had been forgotten, buried in time, erased from curriculum and memory. She could almost feel the weight of their power pressing from the edges of the parchment. As she leaned nearer, the map shifted again, one glowing pathway, illuminating brighter than the rest. It seemed to trace a route, winding downward through layers of the castle. Hermione frowned, trying to match the lines to her knowledge of Hogwarts' geography. Then she saw it. The path led to a place she had only ever read about in passing. Far below the dungeons, deeper even than the Chamber of Secrets, if such a thing were possible. Her thoughts turned quickly to Harry and Ron. She could already imagine Ron groaning at the thought of venturing beneath the school yet again, and Harry's quiet, steady gaze that would inevitably agree to it because he trusted her. But tonight, she was alone with the discovery, and she felt a strange pull to keep it secret for just a little longer. The map pulsed once more, as though sensing her hesitation. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it folded in on itself, collapsing back into the page. The glowing lines vanished, leaving behind only faint runes etched into the parchment. Hermione sat very still, her fingers curled lightly on the desk. Her mind buzzed with questions. Who had made this map? Why had it been hidden? And most importantly, what spells lay forgotten, waiting to be uncovered? She closed the book gently, feeling the cover grow warm beneath her palm, as though alive with awareness. She could sense this was only the beginning, a whisper of something vast and mysterious. The quiet of the library returned, the lantern steady once more, but Hermione could not shake the feeling that she had touched the edge of something that would change everything. Later, when she walked back toward the Gryffindor common room, her footsteps echoed softly on the stone floor. The castle felt awake, its magic lingering in the air like unseen threads. As she passed a window, she paused, looking out over the grounds. The moon hung full and bright above the forbidden forest, its silver glow painting shadows across the trees. She thought again of the map, of the twisting paths beneath Hogwarts, and the seal at the center pulsing like a hidden heartbeat. When she finally reached the common room, Harry was waiting near the fire, his green eyes catching the light. Ron was slouched in an armchair beside him, half asleep, with a book balanced precariously on his knee. They looked up at her, and though she said nothing of her discovery, a part of her longed to tell them. Not yet, she decided, not until she understood more. That night, as Hermione lay in her four-poster bed, curtains drawn around her, she felt the weight of the book in her satchel beside her. Sleep came slowly, threaded with dreams of silver maps and lost spells flickering like candle flames in the dark. Somewhere, deep within the castle, an ancient magic stirred, and though she did not know it yet, the map had chosen her. The days that followed were filled with a quiet restlessness. Hermione carried the weight of her discovery like a secret flame, hidden yet impossible to ignore. The book remained tucked safely in her satchel, its fragile pages whispering to her each time she brushed her fingers against the worn leather. She told no one, not Harry, not Ron. Something about the map felt personal, almost as if it had chosen her alone to uncover its mysteries. On the third evening after her discovery, she lingered in the library once more. The shadows stretched long across the shelves, and the faint scent of parchment and dust wrapped around her like a familiar cloak. She had hoped the book would reveal itself again, but the pages remained stubbornly ordinary, the runes faint and silent. With a sigh, Hermione leaned back, rubbing her tired eyes. And then she heard it, a sound, soft and subtle, like a thread plucked on an invisible harp. It vibrated through the quiet, rising and falling in a pattern that tugged at her attention. She froze, her quill poised above the parchment. The sound was coming not from the book this time, but from somewhere deeper in the library. Hermione rose quietly, her shoes making the faintest of whispers against the floor. The lanterns above flickered again, shadows bending and pooling in strange directions as she moved between towering shelves. The sound persisted, melodic and strange, as if guiding her. She followed it past the familiar aisles, past the section of transfiguration, and the shelves heavy with volumes of magical theory. The restricted section loomed ahead, its iron gate closed but not locked. Hermione hesitated only briefly, before slipping inside. The air here felt different, denser, older, as though time itself lingered longer between these shelves. The sound grew clearer, weaving around her like a faint melody. And then she saw it. A glimmer of silver light shone faintly at the back of the section, where two tall bookcases met in a shadowed corner. Hermione stepped closer, her breath catching. The light traced the edge of a stone panel in the wall, one she had never noticed before. As she reached out, the runes etched faintly across the hidden stone flared to life, glowing the same silver as the map. Her hand hovered, her heart steady but curious. She whispered softly, "Alohomora." The lock dissolved with a quiet click, and the panel slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. A rush of cool air swept out, smelling faintly of earth and something sharper, ancient magic. Hermione tightened her grip on her wand and stepped inside. The passage was narrow, the stone walls pressing close, but it spiraled downward in a gentle curve. She descended slowly, her wand light illuminating carvings etched along the walls, runes she didn't fully recognize, curling symbols that pulsed faintly as she passed. The air grew cooler, the sound she had followed fading into silence, yet she felt herself guided still, as though invisible threads pulled her deeper. At last, the passage opened into a small chamber. The walls here were smoother, carved with precision. In the center stood a pedestal of black stone, its surface etched with the same knot-like seal she had seen on the map. Resting upon the pedestal was an object that made Hermione's breath catch, a mirror, small and circular, framed with silver runes that shimmered faintly in her wand light. She stepped closer, the hush of the chamber pressing against her ears. The mirror's surface was not reflective, like ordinary glass. Instead, it shimmered as though filled with liquid silver, rippling softly. Hermione hesitated, her mind racing through possibilities. A magical artifact, perhaps connected to the map, perhaps dangerous. But curiosity, steady and unrelenting, urged her forward. She reached out and placed her fingertips against the cool surface. The moment her skin touched it, the mirror flared with light. The chamber dissolved around her, and she was swept into a vision, shadows and whispers rushing past, fragments of spells spoken in voices long forgotten. She saw flashes of parchment filled with runes, wizards cloaked in robes of ancient cut, their faces solemn as they traced symbols in the air. Then the vision shifted, sharpening. She saw the map again, floating before her, its silver lines glowing brighter than ever. But now, the paths shifted and opened further, revealing chambers she had not seen before. Vaults hidden deep below Hogwarts, their doors sealed with intricate locks of magic. At the center, the knot-shaped seal pulsed more strongly, and she heard words echoing faintly in her mind. The spells that time forgot await the one who seeks with wisdom. Hermione gasped softly, though her breath made no sound in this strange place. She felt the weight of the words settle within her, not ominous, but heavy with responsibility. The vision dimmed, and she found herself once again in the chamber, her hand still pressed to the mirror. The silver liquid rippled once, then stilled. Hermione stepped back slowly, her heart calm yet racing with thought. She had seen proof. The vaults beneath Hogwarts were real, and within them, lost spells waited to be uncovered. But there was more, for just before the vision had faded, she had glimpsed something else, a shadow moving through the map, like a figure walking the glowing paths. She could not make out who or what it was, but the presence had been there, undeniably. She was not the only one connected to this secret. The thought sent a quiet shiver down her spine, though not of fear. Rather, it was the thrill of mystery, of knowing the story had deepened. Hermione turned to leave, her steps careful on the spiral passage back to the library. As she emerged into the flickering lantern light, she paused, pressing a hand to the book still hidden in her satchel. She understood now that the map and the mirror were connected, pieces of a puzzle that pointed to something larger, older, and far more extraordinary than she had imagined. When she returned to the Gryffindor common room, the fire had burned low. Harry was asleep in one of the armchairs, his head resting against the side, while Ron snored faintly near the hearth. Hermione stood quietly for a moment, watching them with a soft smile. She longed to wake them, to share what she had seen, but the words quicksiled in her throat. The time wasn't right. Not yet. She slipped upstairs instead, the whispers of ancient spells echoing softly in her thoughts. As she lay down in her bed, she knew the path had been set. The map had opened the way, and the mirror had confirmed it. Somewhere beneath Hogwarts, the vaults of forgotten magic waited, and she, Hermione Granger, had been chosen to find them. The next few days unfolded with a quiet rhythm, the kind of rhythm that only Hogwarts could hold. Lectures in grand classrooms filled with drifting candlelight, afternoons by the fire in the Gryffindor common room, and evenings when the castle itself seemed to hum with secrets. Yet beneath this familiar comfort, Hermione carried her private discovery like a lantern in the dark. The map in the mirror had shown her something she could not forget: the existence of hidden vaults beneath the school, waiting in silence. She often found herself distracted during lessons, her quill resting lightly against parchment as her thoughts wandered to the glowing runes she had seen. Even Professor McGonagall's crisp voice, usually enough to capture Hermione's attention without fail, sometimes faded into a gentle background. Harry and Ron, for their part, began to notice her pensiveness. One evening, Harry leaned closer during supper at the long Gryffindor table. The great hall was warm with chatter, the enchanted ceiling mirroring a sky dusted with silver stars. "You've been quiet," he said softly, his green eyes glancing toward her with concern. Ron, in his usual manner, added between bites of shepherd's pie, "Yeah, Hermione. You haven't even corrected me once all day. That's not normal." Hermione gave a small smile, pushing her peas around her plate. "I've just had a lot on my mind, that's all." Her voice was gentle, evasive, but not unkind. Harry studied her for a moment longer, but sensing her reluctance, he let the matter rest. Later that night, while the common room glowed with the fading embers of its fire, Hermione sat curled in an armchair with the book in her lap. The silver lines of the map appeared faint now, as though waiting. She traced them with her fingertip, recalling the voice that had whispered in her mind, the spells that time forgot. Each word carried both promise and mystery, tugging at her curiosity with irresistible force. That same evening, something unusual occurred. As the fire dimmed to its last flicker, the book shifted faintly beneath her hand. She looked down sharply, only to see the map changing once more. New lines appeared, this time forming a path that curved away from the castle and into the outline of the forbidden forest. Hermione's breath caught. The vaults were not only beneath Hogwarts, they extended beyond it, into the ancient woods themselves. She sat very still, her heart calm yet alert. The lines glowed softly, guiding her towards something more. The discovery was not frightening, it was simply inevitable, like a story unfolding exactly as it should. For the next several days, Hermione carried the knowledge quietly, like a secret melody. She began to notice details she might have overlooked before, the way the castle's stones seemed to hum faintly as she passed certain staircases, or how the shadows of the forbidden forest lingered longer at dusk, as if aware of unseen doors opening in the earth. Gentle signs, subtle yet persistent. Finally, one evening after dinner, she felt compelled to act. She waited until Harry and Ron were deep in a game of wizard's chess by the fire, their laughter and bickering filling the common room with warmth. With a soft word of excuse, she slipped away, her satchel pressed close to her side. The corridors were quiet as she walked, her steps muffled against the cool stone floors. Torches flickered along the walls, their flames casting golden pools of light. Hermione's wand glowed faintly, adding its soft beam to the shadows. She followed the path the map had revealed, her heart steady, her mind filled with wonder. The entrance to the forbidden forest stood before her soon enough, dark and mysterious beneath the star-strewn sky. The trees loomed tall, their branches whispering in the night breeze. Hermione hesitated at the edge, remembering the countless warnings about what lurked within. But the pull of discovery outweighed her caution. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the forest. The sounds of the castle faded behind her, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant call of owls. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, scattering silver patterns across the forest floor. She walked carefully, her wand light sweeping gently across roots and underbrush. Every so often, she checked the book in her satchel. The map glowed faintly, reassuring her that she was on the right path. After a time, she came to a clearing. At its center lay a ring of stones, ancient and weathered, half buried in moss. Hermione approached slowly, sensing the quiet hum of magic in the air. As she stepped within the ring, the runes on the stones shimmered to life, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. She knelt, brushing away the moss to reveal more of the carvings. The symbols matched those she had seen on the mirror. She felt no fear, only a deep sense of reverence. Carefully, she set the book upon one of the stones. The map pulsed brightly, lines spreading outward like ripples across water. The earth trembled softly beneath her feet, not in warning, but in acknowledgement, as though the forest itself was listening. And then, without a sound, a doorway appeared in the air at the center of the ring. It was faint, shimmering like a mirage, yet undeniably there. Hermione rose slowly, her wand light dimming in comparison to the silver glow of the portal. She could see faint outlines through it, arches of stone, torches flickering, and shadows of halls that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. She exhaled slowly, her heart calm yet beating with anticipation. This was another piece of the puzzle, another step into the story the map was unfolding. She reached out, but did not cross the threshold. Not yet. She knew she was not ready. Not tonight. Instead, she watched for a long moment, letting the sight imprint itself into her memory. Then, with care, she closed the book, and the doorway dissolved into the night air. The forest returned to its quiet self, the stones lying still and silent. Hermione sat for a moment in the clearing, the cool air brushing against her face, the soft light of the moon wrapping her in its gentle glow. She felt no urgency, only the steady certainty that the vaults and their secrets would wait for her. The map would guide her again when the time was right. When she finally returned to the castle, the corridors were empty and hushed. She slipped back into the Gryffindor common room, where Harry and Ron had fallen asleep by the fire, the chessboard forgotten between them. Hermione smiled softly, her secret safe for now, the story still unfolding. As she climbed the stairs to her dormitory, she carried with her a quiet awe, knowing she stood on the threshold of something vast and ancient. The forest had shown her its doorway. The vaults waited, and the spells that time had forgotten whispered faintly in the silence, patient and eternal. The days after her journey into the clearing of stones passed with a kind of hushed expectancy. To the rest of the world, Hogwarts went on as it always did. Lessons, laughter echoing in the courtyards, owls swooping overhead with letters and packages tied neatly to their legs. Yet for Hermione, the world had subtly shifted. She knew there was something waiting, hidden beneath the familiar rhythm of the school, something that invited her deeper into its mystery. At first, she tried to keep her secret close, but Hermione was never one to hold her discoveries for long, not when her friends had always stood beside her. One evening, as the common room fire crackled low, she finally shared it with Harry and Ron. She spread the book across the table, careful with its fragile pages. Harry leaned forward, his eyes intent, while Ron slouched in his chair, rubbing the sleep from his face but paying closer attention than he let on. "It's not just a book," Hermione whispered, her tone steady but gentle. "It's a map. Not just of Hogwarts either. There are vaults beneath the castle, ancient ones, and the forest. It hides doorways that lead deeper still." Harry's expression was thoughtful, his green eyes catching the glow of the firelight. "Vaults? Like the Chamber of Secrets?" Hermione shook her head slowly. "Older, different. These vaults weren't built to hide monsters or artifacts. They were built to guard knowledge, spells that were erased from history." Ron frowned, though curiosity flickered across his face. "Guarded for a reason, I'll bet. You don't just tuck away magic like that, unless it's dangerous." Hermione didn't argue, though her eyes gleamed with quiet determination. Dangerous, or powerful, or simply forgotten, we don't know yet, but the map chose to reveal itself. That means it wants to be found. There was a long pause. The only sound was the fire sighing in the hearth, Then Harry nodded, calm and steady. If this is real, we need to see it for ourselves. Together, Ron groaned softly, but Hermione noticed he didn't protest further. She smiled faintly. She had expected as much. So it was decided, in that unspoken way their trio always worked. They would explore step by step, letting curiosity lead them, but never rushing. The next evening, under the cloak of night, they slipped quietly from Gryffindor Tower. The castle seemed to watch them as they walked, portraits whispering softly, staircases creaking faintly under their feet. Yet the corridors parted for them like a path meant to be walked. Hermione carried the book, its runes glowing faintly in the moonlight. The map guided them toward the dungeons first, its lines tracing a path that twisted beyond the familiar classrooms of potions. They followed narrow stairwells that spiraled lower and lower until the air grew cool and damp. The stones glistened faintly with condensation, and the scent of earth grew stronger. Ron shivered, pulling his robes tighter. Feels like we're walking into the belly of the castle. Perhaps we are, Hermione replied softly, though her voice carried no fear, only a quiet reverence. At last, they came upon a wall that looked no different from any other. Rough stone fitted seamlessly together, but the map glowed brighter, and Hermione stepped closer, her hand brushing against the runes etched faintly into the rock. With a whisper of recognition, the stones shifted, opening like a door. The three of them entered cautiously. The passage beyond was narrow, leading them into a chamber lit by a faint, unearthly glow. The walls shimmered with runes that pulsed gently, as though alive. "This place," Harry whispered, his voice hushed. "It feels ancient." Hermione nodded. "Older than Hogwarts, perhaps. Or perhaps built alongside it." They moved slowly, exploring the chamber. At its center stood a pedestal of stone, upon which rested an orb of crystal, cracked but glowing faintly. Hermione stepped nearer, but not too close. She could feel its energy thrumming through the air, not dangerous but waiting, expectant. Ron eyed it warily. "Looks like the sort of thing that'll wake up if we poke it." Hermione smiled faintly. "Then we won't poke it." "Not yet." She knelt instead, examining the runes carved into the base. They told fragments of a story, words of spells that had been erased, bound away so they could not be spoken carelessly. Harry crouched beside her, watching intently. "Do you think these are the lost spells?" "I think they're fragments," Hermione said softly. "Pieces of something larger. The map will guide us to the rest." Ron sighed, but there was no true complaint in it. He stepped around the chamber, peering into the shadows. "So, what's the choice here? Do we take it or leave it be?" Hermione hesitated, her brow furrowed in thought. She reached out, not to touch the orb, but to hover her hand above it. Warmth radiated upward, and with it, a feeling, not of menace, but of patience. "It doesn't want to be taken," she murmured. "Not yet. It wants us to learn, to prepare." So they left the orb where it stood, choosing curiosity over possession, patience over haste. The choice felt right, like turning the page of a book rather than skipping to its end. When they emerged once more into the night air, the forest looming at the edges of the grounds Hermione felt a calm certainty settle within her. They were walking a path laid out long before their time, one that asked not for boldness or bravery, but for gentleness and understanding. The vaults would reveal themselves slowly, as all true knowledge did, and the choices they made along the way, when to step forward, when to wait, when to trust, would shape not just their discovery, but themselves. That night, as they walked back toward the glow of the castle windows, the three of them did not speak much. They didn't need to. Their footsteps fell in rhythm, steady and sure, carrying them into the heart of Hogwarts, with the quiet promise of more discoveries waiting. The following nights carried a rhythm of quiet exploration. Hermione, Harry, and Ron moved carefully, guided always by the gentle glow of the runes etched within the ancient map. Each time it revealed a new path, it was not with urgency, but with patience, as though the map itself wanted to teach them the art of pacing, the virtue of waiting until they were truly ready. On the fourth night of their journey, the trio found themselves drawn once more to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. The map's lines shimmered faintly, pointing them toward a hollow in the trees where the ground dipped low, covered in moss and woven roots. The forest was calm, bathed in silver moonlight, its branches swaying in the breeze like slow-moving guardians. Ron whispered, his voice more awed than anxious. "We're going back in, aren't we?" Hermione nodded. She held the book close, the glow of its runes mingling with the soft light of the moon. The vaults lie beneath the forest. That much is clear, but tonight feels different. As though it's leading us towards something greater, Harry adjusted his cloak, his eyes scanning the shadows. Then we follow, step by step. The three moved together, their footsteps soft on the forest floor. After some distance, they came upon a circle of ancient stones, half buried and worn smooth by centuries. The map pulsed warmly, and Hermione knew this was the place. At its center lay a slab of stone marked with spiral carvings that seemed to twist and move faintly when touched by moonlight. She stepped forward, tracing the lines carefully with her eyes. "This is it," she whispered, "the Vault of Insight." Harry and Ron joined her at the circle's edge. Hermione placed the book upon the stone, and as she did, the carvings flared with light, soft, golden, and steady, as though the earth itself was breathing. The runes lifted from the page of the book, swirling upward, weaving together into a shimmering archway that hovered in the air above the slab. Beyond the archway was not darkness, but a gentle glow, like dawn waiting to break. The three exchanged glances, and then, without words, stepped through together. The world beyond the arch was unlike any place they had seen before. They stood in a vast, vaulted chamber, its ceiling lost in a haze of golden mist. The walls were covered in carvings, spells, histories, fragments of knowledge etched in flowing script. They glowed faintly, illuminating the chamber with a warm radiance. But it was what stood at the chamber's center that held their breath still, a grand, ancient lectern, carved of stone and inlaid with silver. Resting upon it was a scroll bound in golden thread, its parchment so old it seemed to fill hum with the weight of time. Hermione approached first, reverent and unhurried, She could feel the air vibrating softly, as though the chamber itself held its breath. When she reached the lectern, she looked back at Harry and Ron. Both nodded silently, steady and supportive. She untied the golden thread and unrolled the scroll. The parchment revealed itself in glimmering ink that moved like liquid silver across the page. Words unfolded slowly, not all at once, as though they wished to be read with patience. Hermione's voice was quiet, but steady as she read aloud. These are the spells lost to time, not because they were wicked, but because the world was not ready to bear their weight. Guard them with wisdom, and they shall awaken once more. The words shifted, forming shapes, symbols that represented spells of great subtlety. They were not curses nor charms of destruction, but spells of harmony and balance. One could mend broken memories, weaving together fragments of thought. Another could summon the echoes of the past, not to alter it, but to understand it more clearly. Yet another offered a way to bind discord into silence, calming even the fiercest quarrel. Hermione's breath caught softly. "These aren't weapons," she whispered. "They're gifts, spells meant to heal, to restore, to guide." Ron leaned closer, his eyes wide. "Then why hide them? Why bury them in vaults?" Harry answered quietly, his gaze fixed on the glowing parchment. "Because sometimes, even gentle power can be misused. If you can quiet anger, you can silence truth. If you can mend memory, you can change it. Even gifts need guardians." The insight settled over them like a warm blanket. The vault was not merely a treasure trove of forgotten magic. It was a reminder of choice, of responsibility. Knowledge itself was neither good nor bad. It was the hands that wielded it, that shaped its fate. Hermione rolled the scroll closed with care, her fingers lingering on the golden thread before tying it once more. She did not take it from the lectern. Instead, she left it where it rested, in the quiet glow of the vault. Ron frowned faintly. "You're not bringing it with us?" Hermione shook her head gently. "The map didn't lead us here to claim it. It led us here to understand. The scroll will stay, safe until the time comes when the world is ready." Harry smiled faintly, the corners of his eyes soft. And maybe that's the point. That some knowledge isn't meant to be kept in one person's hands. It's meant to remind us of the choices we make. The chamber seemed to agree. The glow dimmed slightly, as though satisfied. The runes on the walls shimmered gently, their light softer now, like a candle burning low at the end of the evening. Hermione tucked the map carefully into her robes. Its runes no longer glowed with urgency. They pulsed with a calm rhythm, as if in quiet gratitude. The trio stood together in the silence, their breaths slow and steady. For a long while, they simply looked around, taking in the vastness of the chamber, the sense of ancient wisdom that filled it. None of them felt the need to rush away. Finally, Harry spoke softly. "We'll remember this. Even if no one else ever knows," Ron grinned, though his voice was quiet. "Sounds like most of our adventures, doesn't it?" Hermione chuckled softly, her eyes warm. "Yes, but this one feels different. Not just a discovery, but a lesson. One I'll carry with me always." When at last they stepped back through the archway, the chamber behind them faded into mist. The arch itself dissolved, leaving only the circle of stones bathed in moonlight. The night was calm, the forest whispering softly around them, as though nothing had stirred at all. But they knew better. Something had stirred, not in the forest, not in the stones, but in themselves. They had seen what lay within the vault of insight, and it had left them gentler, wiser, more aware of the quiet choices that shaped their paths. They returned to Hogwarts in silence, the glow of the castle windows guiding them home. The night held them close, wrapping them in its hush, as though it, too, understood the weight of what they had seen. And though they carried no relic, no scroll, no spell to boast of, the revelation lingered with them, gentle and enduring. Some discoveries were not meant to be shouted to the world. Some were meant to live quietly in the heart, shaping the way one moved through life. The night air felt cooler as Hermione, Harry, and Ron made their way back toward the castle, the faint echo of their footsteps softened by the forest floor. The ancient stone circle was now quiet, as if the vault they had glimpsed had folded itself back into timeless slumber, content that its secret had been kept safe. A silvery mist curled around the edges of the trees, weaving through the branches in delicate ribbons. Ron gave a long sigh, the kind that came not from fear or exhaustion, but from the quiet release of an unspoken weight. "Well," he murmured, "I'll say this. It's nice for once to finish something without a giant snake or cursed object trying to bite our heads off." Harry chuckled softly. "Not every mystery ends with a battle. Sometimes it just teaches us something." Hermione walked between them, her expression serene. Her hand rested lightly on the pocket where the map lay tucked away, its glow now dim and steady, no longer urging her onward. And perhaps that's the point. The map showed us what we needed, not to collect or claim, but to understand. That's worth more than 1,000 spells. They reached the edge of the forbidden forest. From there, the soft outline of Hogwarts rose against the night sky, its towers lit by gentle torchlight, the windows glowing like dozens of small lanterns welcoming them home. The castle, so familiar and steadfast, seemed to hum with its own quiet magic, as though it had sensed their journey and was waiting patiently for their return. The trio walked slowly up the sloping grounds, savoring the calm. No rush of footsteps, no sense of pursuit, just the rhythm of their breathing and the rustle of grass beneath their shoes. The night was theirs alone, a gentle cocoon of silence wrapped around the world. When they reached the stone steps of the castle, Ron stopped and glanced back. The forest loomed in the distance, shrouded in shadows and silver mist, holding its mysteries close. "Do you think we'll ever be called back there?" he asked quietly. Hermione smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the torches. "Perhaps. But if we are, it won't be because we went looking. It will be because the forest decides we are ready." Harry nodded, his voice calm. "And when it does, we'll walk the path together again." Just like tonight, they pushed open the great oak doors, the familiar warmth of the castle washing over them. The air inside carried the scent of burning wood from the hearths, mixed with the faint aroma of parchment and old stone. Candles floated lazily above the hallways, their flames flickering with a gentle glow, guiding their way as they moved deeper inside. For a long while, the trio walked together in quiet. There was no need for words. Each of them carried the same feeling in their hearts, a sense of completion, of gentle closure. The castle's walls seemed to embrace them, easing them back into the rhythm of ordinary life after their brush with ancient secrets. As they reached the staircases, Ron gave a small grin. "I don't know about you two, but I'm ready for the world's longest nap." Hermione laughed softly, the sound like the warm flicker of a candle. "That sounds sensible, for once." Harry's smile was faint, but content. "Sleep sounds good." The staircases shifted slowly, carrying them upward to their dormitories. Their footsteps echoed gently against the stone, blending into the hush of the castle at night. And as they climbed higher, the weight of the vault and its wisdom seemed to melt into something lighter, a memory to carry rather than a burden to bear. By the time they reached their rooms, the map had grown entirely still in Hermione's pocket, as though it too had gone to sleep. She felt no urge to open it again, no tug of runes or glow of light. Its purpose had been fulfilled, and it had settled into quiet rest, leaving behind only the lessons it had chosen to share. They parted with quiet goodnights, each retreating into the comfort of their own space. The castle settled around them like a blanket, its magic steady, protective, and kind. Outside, the forest whispered to itself beneath the moon, but the trio no longer felt called to it. For now, their journey was done, and the night was theirs to rest in. Hermione lay awake for a few moments longer, gazing at the shadows cast by her curtains. She thought of the vault, of the glowing scroll, of the knowledge it had chosen to keep hidden until the right moment. She thought of how easily it might have been misused, and how grateful she was that they had been given the chance to understand without the temptation to wield. Her eyes grew heavy, her breathing even. A last, gentle thought floated through her mind before she drifted into sleep, that sometimes the greatest discoveries were not the ones you held in your hands, but the ones you carried quietly in your heart. And with that, the night folded around her, calm and unbroken, as Hogwarts stood watch under the stars. The castle lay deep in slumber, its towers silhouetted against a sky sprinkled with quiet stars. The night seemed endless, yet utterly peaceful, as though time itself had slowed to allow Hogwarts to breathe in stillness. Inside the common rooms, fires had dwindled to glowing embers, and the portraits along the corridors dozed in their frames, their painted eyes gently closed. Hermione stirred beneath her blankets, shifting only slightly before sinking into the comfort of her pillow. The map rested quietly on her bedside table, no longer glowing, no longer whispering. It seemed to her like a guardian that had finally gone to rest after fulfilling its duty. She smiled faintly at the thought. Some mysteries did not need to be solved all at once. Some were meant to wait, unfolding only when hearts were ready. In the dormitories above and below, Ron and Harry too had surrendered to the calm rhythm of sleep. Ron, with his easy breathing and the faintest of snores, was lost to dreams of simple joys. Harry, more silent, carried with him the same sense of peace he had spoken of earlier, that not every discovery needed a fight, and not every adventure needed to end in chaos. Together, the three of them rested, their friendship itself a shield stronger than any spell. The castle seemed to sigh with them, its stones holding memories both ancient and new, its corridors winding like a lullaby. Outside, the moonlight draped the grounds in silver, and the forest, mysterious and eternal, kept its secrets close. All was well for now, and that was enough. If you are listening, let the same peace that surrounded them reach you too. Imagine the warmth of the common room fire, the hush of the halls, the quiet of the night sky above the castle. Picture yourself there, safe within those enchanted walls, where every sound is softened and every shadow is gentle. Let your eyes grow heavy, your breathing slow and deep. Know that in this moment, like Harry, Ron, and Hermione, you are safe, you are held, and you are watched over by the quiet magic of the night. And as the last stars shimmer faintly above the castle's highest tower, allow yourself to drift into dreams, carrying with you the warmth of Hogwarts and the promise of tomorrow. Sleep now, in comfort and wonder. The magic will still be here when you wake.